My name is Jean-Michel Jarre and I'm a French musician living in Paris. My definition of creativity would be probably a mixture of innovation and curiosity. My music is coming from this idea of dealing with space, not necessarily outer space, but the space around us. In a way, it has been linked with environment even far before I became a kind of activist linked to regarding environmental issues. But actually, I always considered that the music would be a kind of, or my music would be in suspension between the ground level and maybe 10 meters above. I think it's where life is all about, and it's actually where the sound is traveling. And I like this idea that doing music is actually making sounds traveling. This idea came far before my first concert. Actually, when I was a kid, my grandfather was an inventor and a quite crazy engineer, and he was playing oboe also. And he gave me a tape recorder when I was 9 or 10 years old. I was spending a lot of time by recording the sound in the street, and I had no idea that I would make music with this principle one day. One day I played the tape backwards, and I thought that aliens were talking to me. And then I started to have this kind of very organic and almost sensual relationship with sounds. And then considering music not only in terms of notes based on solfeggio, but really linked with dealing with sounds. And it's this idea of making sounds traveling is probably came from that. And later on, of course, I mean, doing concerts in different locations outdoor also was linked with this first feeling. What makes probably the difference of arts and any kind of scientific activity or is the notion of accident. Every musician, every artist is actually hijacking the technology around him and or around her. And it's what makes the style. When we are dealing with 12 notes, what makes the specificity of every artist is actually the way he's going to deal and creating accidents within these 12 notes. Actually, it's funny because at the beginning, electronic music has nothing to do with America. It has nothing to do with the rock, blues, jazz. It's coming basically from continental Europe, from Germany, from France, with people such as Stockhausen and Pierre Schaeffer, Pierre-Henry, and with Theremin in Russia, with Luigi Russolo in Italy. It's coming actually from the classical music. These long instrumental pieces. What the 20th century brought us probably is electricity and Africa. Electricity, I mean, then we were able for the first time as musicians to record our music and then to deal with electronic instruments. And Africa gave us the groove. Originally, electronic music was not that groovy because it was still very influenced by classical music. Rhythmic is totally different, as we know. And then the electronic music moved into the first form defined by these European pioneers into something that would be a kind of merging between pop culture and technology, electronic technology. I don't think that music can evolve or anything can evolve without even more than appropriation, without stealing. I love this sentence by Picasso saying that talent is copying, genius are stealing. And then signed Picasso, and then Banksy, ripped off the signature and put Banksy underneath. I think that's a very beautiful resume of what any kind of creative activity is all about. And you can only exist if you kill your masters. Actually, he was not necessarily wrong in those days, in the sense that, with all the respect with great musicians, great French musicians, rock and roll is a kind of ethnic music coming from the US and from England, which invaded the world. For instance, on the French point of view, you wouldn't be necessarily interested by Jacques Brel coming from Madagascar, or an Edith Piaf coming from, I don't know, Malaysia, because we have the original ones. And it was the same thing. It's funny because when I was listening to my generation of The Who, or the early Stones, or the Beatles, and I remember in my teenage that I said, they have their revolution, we have to find ours as musicians in France. I mean, this revolution is talking to us because we are the same generation. They found their grammar, they found their vocabulary. We need to find ours. And this is one of the reasons also I've been interested by electronic music, because it was something totally different from the pop culture, from the rock culture. And this is the reason why that today John Lennon wouldn't say the same today about electronic music, because the reason why the French scene and the German scene, the continental European scene is so important in electronic music is because it's our DNA. It's the DNA of kind of European culture, linked to movies, linked to literature, linked to paintings, linked to classical music. The difficulty is you don't know. You know, the trap, and I think it's true for everything, when you start to do something, you get used to it. And then after a while, you don't know if you like it because you're just familiar about it, or you like it because it has a kind of value. And I think it's true for everything. And I remember that I did this experience of recording 3 minutes of sounds coming from the street. And then I played that at home with friends and family, and it was just what it was, just 3 minutes of random sounds. But after a week, you knew when the bicycle was going, when a dog was barking, and it was not anymore random sounds. It was becoming something familiar, part of our environment. And then we started to develop a kind of almost affective relationship with something familiar. So it's very difficult to judge yourself. It's what you're doing as a value. And it's not necessarily also an answer if people are liking or hating what you do. So it's quite mysterious. I think that creativity is probably an addiction, and also a kind of dream between, I don't know, hope and frustration. The fact that every time you think that what you've done is not good enough, and the hope that next time it will be better. And this is why I think that writers or painters or musicians are, as long as their bodies is carrying them, they go on. There is no retirement for an artist. I don't know. I think that, of course, like any living creatures, we prefer pleasant things than unpleasant things, except in certain situations in your life. But otherwise, you prefer that. But you prefer then having positive, of course, reception of your work than the reverse. But I think it doesn't really change anything, because I think that when you, as I said, like an addiction, you do it anyway. You are who you are, and whatever you can do, you can't change. You can't really change. I think an artist is doing variations of himself, of herself, and whatever you think, it's going to be a kind of declination of your own style. I mean, when you think about the Beatles or Tarantino or Welbeck, they're all saying the same thing. They're all doing the same book, the same music, the same movies, the same movie, and it's just the declination of the style. I remember that I met Fellini at the end of his life, and he told me, you know, Jean-Michel, I think that I was always doing a different movie every time, and looking back, I realized that it was always the same thing. I think looking back, it was a big mistake. But you know, it was in those days there. I had a problem, not to go into a too cheesy psychoanalytic problems, but I always considered that soundtracks were my father's territory. And then I refused a lot of soundtracks. So as probably a pretext in my mind, I was so in love with Nino Rota. I'm still in love with Nino Rota's music. And I have a lot of respect for duets, not couples, but duets in creation, partly between a composer and filmmaker. The fantastic relationship between Ennio Morricone and Sergio Leone, or recently with Trent Reznor and David Fincher, or for instance Hans Zimmer with these days with Denis Villeneuve, and so I thought that I was absolutely not able to match the beauty and the perfection of what they created for years. So actually, this is true. I really said no, and actually the movie never happened anyway. So my regrets are just are okay. I can live. I can survive with that. I'm talking about this in my book. You have some very mysterious periods. For 10 years, I was absolutely dry. I was going into the studio. It was just almost painful like being en manque, you know. And then you go to you try to things, and then you feel that you're just repeating yourself or finding tricks, but there is no juice. And it's very scary because you don't know if it's going to come back. You know, technology is neutral. I don't think it should be scary or necessarily exciting. What is exciting is the unknown. And there is this probably this very human attitude, thinking that yesterday was better, tomorrow is going to be worse. Probably because we are scared we have a rather dystopian vision of the future, because somehow we know that one day we're not going to be part of it. This is the reason why that our vision as human beings of the future is necessarily dark. It's an interesting question, because I would have said no for a long time, and recently I realized with working with the Feng Shui in my life that actually I was feeling much more creative when I look northwest, and I don't know why, and it's not linked to Hitchcock, but actually I feel more dynamic and more creative when I look northwest. So now I'm always trying to find a compass to find where the northwest is, which is quite a good thing by the end of the day. I don't know if it's really true, but it works.